Alright, so like I mentioned in my last video, I'm doing a couple videos on things I get requested the most. Okay, the last video on sort of joining SF over 30 is one I get pretty common, but this one is by far the thing I get asked the most about in the comment section of every video, direct messages. Probably over 100 people have asked me to do a video on this, so I'm finally gonna do it, okay? Now, with this video, I don't like to typically make videos that I don't have first-hand direct experience in doing, okay? And that's going to be what is National Guard Special Forces like, okay? I was never in the Guard. I was never in an SF Guard unit. I didn't work with 19th or 20th Group. We'll talk about what those are. But, however, right, I do know how it works, and also I do actually have a bunch of buddies that I used to be on the teams with in first group that got out and went Guard, and now they're actually on 19th and 20th Group teams. So I do have direct access. I've talked to some of my buddies, gotten a better idea of what it's actually like for them. And so, right, this is more of a hearsay video, okay, but it is coming from the community. So take it with a grain of salt, right? Yeah, also, I'm terrible about this in my videos, but I'm supposed to, I need to start telling you guys to like, comment, and subscribe on the videos. Not that I'm that concerned about it, but it does help the algorithm, I guess, and helps build the channel, okay? The channel's growing super fast as is, but if you guys don't mind, that'd be cool. So let's get right into it. National Guard SF. Let's talk about sort of what the differences are between being an active duty Green Beret and a National Guard Green Beret, okay? A lot of guys, like I mentioned, did active careers and then got out and went Guard SF after that. But I do know some guys that I went through the Q course with quite a few guys that were strictly straight up National Guard and just haven't been active at all, okay? So we'll talk about, we'll start from the beginning, and let's say Special Force Assessment Selection, the process of getting there, the Q course, and then actually what group life is like in one of those groups instead of, like first group and active duty group. So the biggest thing for you guys to understand for National Guard SF, when it comes to the front load part, Special Forces Assessment Selection, Q course, all that, there is no difference, guys. Okay, so I went through with 18 at National Guard, 18 x-rays, and it was the exact same thing for them. Okay, there's no extra going home or anything like that. You go on active duty orders, you go to selection, you get selected, you then are there at the Q course, just like everybody else. You're essentially active duty while you go through the Q course. Okay, that is absolutely no different than anybody else. So it's not going to be any easier for you. Everything's going to have the same expectations. You're going to be graded the exact same way. You're just another dude going through the course. Where it differs, okay, and this is actually a huge, huge difference, is if you do not pass, you quit, you fail, you do not do, the same thing does not happen to you what happens to active duty soldiers that go that route, right? Let's say you wash out of the Q course and you're an active duty 18 x-ray. You're going potentially to the 82nd or needs of the Army, and that's it. Go, boom. You're going to go be in a line unit. It is what it is. You're going to, and you're going to do the rest of your time there. You potentially could come back, right? But you don't just get to go home. You go to a new unit and you continue your military contract until it's over, right? Whereas National Guard, that's not the case. You don't just get sent to a new, different unit. Now you're active duty. No. You go back to your unit that you were in the Guard with, and you go back to your regular civilian life, and you're, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, National Guard career. Okay, so that actually is a huge benefit to the guys that wash out. It's not nearly as punishing, right? Because I just go back home and go back to my regular job, and I'm just in the Guard. Okay. So what I will say though is I did see a lot of guys with Guard contracts that affected because they knew in the back of their head, oh, it's just an easy way out. I just get to go home. Guys like me, active duty guys in the Q course, we didn't have that luxury. We knew if I wash out, I'm headed down the road, right? So it kind of gives you a get out of jail free card, which you really don't want when you go through the Q course. You really want the ultimatum there. To anything that can keep you from quitting, you want to have in your back pocket, right? You don't want any incentives like that. But, you know, a lot of guys make it through anyway, okay? So that's the biggest difference for Q course guard and active duty, okay, is really what happens if you don't make it. So what happens if you do make it, okay? Sort of the same thing, except for you don't go back to your regular unit. You go to, you know, 19th or 20th group, which they actually have different units all over the place. But you guys can look those up and see where they're at and all that type of stuff. I'm not going to get that into the weeds about that. But so you don't go to first group or third group and become active duty. You go to your guard SF unit, right, and go back to your regular job and your same 1 weekend a month, 2 weekends a year type of National Guard career that you're doing. However, okay, this is where it differs from a regular National Guard unit, okay? National Guard SF kind of has the luxury of being as active or as high of op tempo as they really want, because you can potentially get in on a lot of different deployments. You can fill slots in different groups, different deployments. That used to be a big thing for guys chasing combat deployments. So you can it's kind of a pick your own adventure for how active you want to be. Okay, so one of my buddies I talked to was like, man, I've deployed more now that I'm in the Guard than I did when I was in first group. So he's constantly off doing things, right? And there's guys who I've talked to who are like, man, I try not to deploy almost ever if I can get away with it. They don't have to, right? You potentially might have to here and there, but again, it's kind of a however active you want to be, you can kind of choose to be, which is kind of a cool way to do it, because if you start getting burned out like so many guys in group and active duty do, it doesn't matter. You're active duty, man. Like, you either get out or continue on. Whereas the Guard guys, they can sort of say, hey, I need a break. I'm not going on whatever deployments, or you can jump on the next deployment to wherever, okay? There's nuances to that, right? But generally speaking, you have more control of your life, right? Because you're in the Guard, and your level of op tempo, which is, I think, a beneficial thing for a lot of guys, right? Yeah, let's talk about, that's kind of the benefits, right? Let's talk about the negatives to Guard SF, okay? And this is no knock on Guard dudes, but the reality is just the amount of time an active duty ODA spends training, getting ready for combat, things like that, is so much more than guys in the Guard. Because again, you're in the Guard, you're potentially training 1 weekend a month, a couple weeks in the summer, things like that, maybe more here and there if you're in an SF unit, but guys are going to be less experienced, they're going to be less skilled, okay? That's, again, no knock on them, it's a time investment thing, right? Whereas someone like me that spent 7.5, 8 years on an ODA is going to be infinitely more experienced than the guy who does 7 years in the Guard SF unit, because just the amount of time I have invested that, you know, my counterpart there, he's had a regular job for most of the year, right? And he gets to spend time with his family and things like that, maybe deploys every once in a while. So that is the trade-off, okay? But that's not to say that Guard guys aren't highly trained and highly skilled comparatively to anywhere else in the military, absolutely. But compared to your, you know, hard-charging line ODAs in an active unit, that's not really comparable, okay? Next one is obviously less pay, right? Like, if you are, you're on a National Guard pay scale, you're not getting paid anywhere near what you're getting paid in active duty. Now, you probably have another career, another job, right, where you're getting paid, so that should offset that. But keep in mind, you have to then be at that job. Also, you need to have a job that's willing to let you leave for substantial amounts of time and then come back, right? Let's say you got to deploy for 6 months and come back. Now, technically, jobs can't fire you for that, for being in the Guard and deploying, right? But it can affect things for you at your job, right? Like people might get kind of sick of the fact that you just gone back, right? Your managers, things like that. Hopefully not, but that could potentially be an issue for you. Juggling work or a job with the National Guard and then mixing and deploying and things like that. It can get challenging and get complicated when dealing with, your regular jobs too. Yeah, and then not necessarily a negative one. The last one is when you deploy, right, for 6 months or whatever you're doing, you actually are just on active orders. So you're basically just active duty while you're deployed. Okay, so that's something for you to think about. You go on full-time pay and things like that, so it'll offset you not working at your other job. So I guess it's more of a benefit, but that's just something to think about, that when you're deployed and doing stuff, you're going to be basically active duty, full-time, just like a line active ODA, doing stuff like that. Okay, so if you guys have any other questions about it, let me know. Again, I was never on a National Guard ODA, so I can't give you guys first-hand knowledge, but a lot of stuff is from my buddies who have been or are currently, so should be decent information for you. All right, guys, take care.